Greetings, my Legionnaires! Today I want to bring you my thoughts and impressions on the recent Destiny 2 open beta. Now this is going to be a little more freeform, a little more editorial, like some of my other kind of reviews in progress, but this is not a review in progress even, just some thoughts that I had and I want to share with you for those who might have been unable to join us and everybody else this weekend to play the game. So first off, Destiny 2 is a very fascinating thing to me. It's, the first game was, I think, the first true game that I had on Xbox One a few years back. So it has a special place in my heart as being something that always felt like next gen, quote unquote, is, as far as controls and looks and all that. Even if that's not necessarily like the first game that everyone got to play. But Destiny 2 is kind of trying to fulfill some of the promises that Destiny 1 kind of didn't deliver on. Destiny 1 still, I think, very successful game, but one that got better as time went on. A lot of games do this type of thing if they're kind of this almost MMO loot grindy type situation. Look at like something like Diablo 3, where you kind of have something that kind of launches and there's some issues and they get fixed over time, or there's some DLC that makes things better or kind of adds to it. But Destiny 2 now is kind of focusing on some aspects that the first game didn't really nail home. The first and foremost being kind of story. So if you look at Destiny 2 and a lot of their marketing right now, it's a lot of story-focused things like that, and the trailers and things that you'll see alongside the game, and even the single-player campaign that you get to play itself. So for instance, playing this first level here, you'll see that there was a CG cinematic to start it off, and there's like a CG cinematic at the end, there's a CG cinematic in the middle, trying to get you more invested in the world and the characters, which honestly I would have been hard-pressed in the first game after playing it for quite a while to tell you any of the characters' names. Because in the first game what they would do is they would give you some information and tell you to go find out all this other information online, if you wanted it, through like this Grimoire card thing. I don't think that's back, and I'm happy about it, because it should just all be in the game in the first place. So the story is a much bigger focus, and I think that's a good thing. I think people will be more excited about it, even if they go through it just the one time. Even the DLC was kind of a big thing about the story in the first Destiny, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a big push for that in future DLC for this game, which will inevitably come. Besides the story, though, the big question is, how does the game feel for those who might have not have gotten the chance to play it this weekend? It feels a lot like Destiny 1, and that is a big compliment, because the best thing about that first game was the controls. The controls were excellent. It's this kind of mixture of Halo, which obviously Bungie, who is responsible for both that franchise and this one, is known for, like the controls and every gun feeling fun and interesting to play with. So the controls are obviously on point. They feel great. The kickback from certain guns, especially the revolvers, which I really tend to like, especially in this game. It was really fun, regardless of the class, to play with that. It just seemed to fit my personal play style. But I really enjoy that aspect, and that's one of the things that keeps you playing for hours and hours and hours on end, because if there's a loot grind, the game needs to feel fun. So that's one thing that they've never had a problem with, and it's the same, if not even a little bit better than the first one. So there's always that to consider, which that was the biggest pillar on which they stood in the first game. So no surprise there. The loot that you got to experience in this one, it was all legendary items. They just forced your character to max level. You've got all your legendary equipment, and then in the first mission you get an exotic weapon specific to your class. So I played through the story twice, or like 1.5 times. The first time I played through with the Warlock, I got a pulse rifle. Wasn't a huge fan of that one, but then I got an exotic revolver with the Hunter, which is a lot better personally, because again, like I said, I like those revolvers, and it just seemed a little bit more like my playstyle, and I really enjoyed that. The first mission you go on, the first one that they actually start you in after you pick a class between Warlock, Hunter, and Titan, is just the first story mission, or at least that's what I think it is. Pretty strong, pretty fun, pretty straightforward. You kind of go around by yourself fighting the Cabal, these enemy types that were in the first game. Kind of a bigger deal in this one. They're still one of, I think, 3 or 4 different enemies, that like main enemy factions that you face, but this is just an introduction to them, because they're coming and they're taking over the space, the tower, and they're kind of dealing with all the Guardians as best as they can. So you're kind of in there with these other main story key players to destroy them, kind of repel them. But yeah, it's really fun. You got to go around by yourself for a bit, you group up with some other random people for a little bit, and then finish out the story, fight a few kind of stronger guys, and there you go. As for other player versus environment stuff goes, besides the story, they actually had one mission, or a strike, I should say, that you could play with up to 3 friends all together, so you and 2 buddies, or you could play with just a bunch of random people online if you wanted to as well. So what the strike basically is, it's like a mini raid. You got 3 individuals against, you know, different areas. It's kind of like a story mission, so usually a little bit harder, and usually it ends up being more of a loot hunt. You get better loot from doing strikes and things like that. So they didn't have a raid available, but they did have that first strike, which was probably a good indication of what other strikes and potentially raids could feel like. It's the one that probably a lot of you have seen with the big drill bits and stuff like that. A lot of kind of platforming on top of that, which is pretty interesting. But really, really cool. You know, it's kind of fun to mix and match some of the different classes. The one that was easiest for me was one time I was playing as the Warlock, and we had a Hunter and a Titan. So we're kind of using our abilities that popped up every once in a while to kind of accent or complement one another, which I really enjoyed. It wasn't like a huge deal. It wasn't like a focus on like you have to use this and be in tandem with your buddies. It just would work out pretty well. But for the 3 classes, I guess I should really talk about their supers. So the Warlock was the one I played the most of. There are 2 kind of subclasses within that, and supers that are kind of associated with that. So the one that kind of draws the most attention right now for the Warlock is the ability to kind of have like fire wings and a flame sword. You're kind of like Kale from League of Legends, like fly up in the sky and like throw in these kind of like fire blades at people. And that's really fun. The one I like is a big black hole like orb that you can shoot at people. Probably see that in the PvP, but I enjoyed using that one because it's just kind of big blast, and I like that kind of more of like a dark Warlock. Then you have the Titan, who has kind of this shield that people, you can kind of see, it's like Captain America. You can throw it around, run around, bash with it. And the other one I think that he has, I didn't get to see a ton of this. I saw a little bit of it in PvP, but he kind of runs around this fist, punching people, slamming down on the ground, doing a lot of damage, destroying people. And the Hunter, the Return of the Golden Gun, where you can bust out a revolver that's on fire and kind of shoot a bunch of guys and do a lot of damage really quickly. Or the new one, which is the Arc Strider, which you probably saw with this kind of electric staff, kind of run around and kind of Darth Maul your way through people. Pretty cool. They're all pretty interesting. They all kind of service and provide the same thing as far as just trying to wipe out a ton of enemies very quickly. Both good in PvE and in the PvP. So. And speaking of PvP, there were 2 different types of modes that we got to play. One mode is where you would go on attack or defense, and you'd have to kind of go towards these 2 fuse points. And what would happen is if you were on attack and you set one of these detonations to occur, your team would get a point if the other team wouldn't defuse it in time. Or if you were on the defending team and you're able to defuse these and wipe the other team, then you would win. But if you're the attacking team and you wipe the other enemy team, then you would win. So it's a 4v4, pretty quick matches. I wasn't a huge fan of it because there's these 2 points, like I mentioned, where if they like pick one point on attack and you're on defense and they like start a bomb, then you have to like run over to that point, and then it like they could just destroy you, or you try to destroy them. It's, I don't know, it's just not very fun. It's pretty quick, so it's like best of, I don't know, there was like, you had to win like 6 matches to win, so it's kind of like best of like 11, I think, or 13, I don't know. It was not that great. I didn't enjoy it. The other one, a little more straightforward, just to capture and control a point. There was 3 points, A, B, and C. B being kind of in the middle, and A and C, you know, one team started at A, the other one started at C, and then holding those points would garner you more points when you actually killed a person. So at least that's how it was explained to me. So those are really fun, especially if you have buddies. I had Joe and Drew join me, so there's 3 of us, and these were 4-on-4 matches, so we'd have another person. There's a few times that they have a mercy limit, so that way if your team is just crushing the other team, or you in turn are getting crushed, which did happen once or twice to me, then it would just, you'd hear the announcer say, yep, I'm calling this one, you guys aren't going to win, we're just going to move to the next one. So really quick, really fast, breezy matches. Nothing wrong with that. I think it's a really good thing. You know, one thing I liked about the first Destiny was that the matches did feel fun, and they didn't feel crippling. You know, you got to go in there, try out some weapons that you got from the PvE, like the story, the strikes, or whatnot, and you got to take them into PvP and see if they're actually still good and viable. So it's just a lot of fun, pretty easy breezy, nothing super crazy, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, that is pretty much everything that was in the Destiny 2 beta that I saw. There was 1 hour on Saturday that you could go to this farm, like this social area, kind of like the tower in the last one, where it's like a third-person view. You can see your character and like you can play soccer and do all this stuff. I didn't see that. I don't really care about that, to be completely frank. But so far, Destiny 2 is looking pretty good. For people who didn't like the first Destiny, honestly, this is just more of that, so don't come here thinking that, oh man, this is going to be something new and fresh and different. The focus on story is greatly appreciated, but it is still a focus on gunplay, getting loot, and then, you know, rinse and repeat, basically. Like, you just shoot stuff, get loot, equip the loot. If it's good, you keep it, and then just keep going, keep going. So, really fun. Obviously, a lot better with friends, and that's a big push they made in the first game, and they're probably going to make in this game, too. They want you to team up with your buddies. These strikes are for 3 people, so they want you to team up with at least 1, if not 2 of your friends and play through these, and then the raids will be bigger even still. And I've heard that's where a lot of the best content was in the first game, and I didn't even really touch that so much. They said 50% of their player base in the first game never got to raids because they were just so late in the game. So I think they're going to push those forward, but for Destiny 2, the beta impressions for me, if you like the first game, you'll love this. If you didn't really enjoy where this franchise was in the first game or is still going in the second game, it's not going to be drastically different. But if there's a chance that you get to try one of these betas or hop in for like a free-to-play weekend, you know, just check it out, give it a shot, you know, for lack of a better term. And yeah, let me know what you think. But I really do want to hear your thoughts if anyone did get to play the beta. I did have some issues, I should say that too, connectivity-wise. I got kicked quite a bit here and there. That happens in betas, and sometimes, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like it happens to be more frequently. It's okay, it's understandable. Hopefully they'll get some of these kinks worked out moving forward. And that's why I like to play these betas, is that way they can kind of feel it, you know, and get this feedback, so that way they can make a better product at launch. So I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to playing and reviewing Destiny 2 when it comes out in September. But again, if you guys have any thoughts on this franchise, on where it's going, or if you played the beta, I do want to hear your stories and all the things you have to say. So thank you so much for joining me for this little kind of rant, as it were, editorial, as we talked about Destiny 2. I like to do these every once in a while, and I hope you guys like them, so let me know in the comments below. Leave us a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you really want to help us, you can share us around. That would be really great, you know, just share us to another Destiny 2 loving friend or whatnot. Also, if you really, really want to help us out, check out patreon.com/criticalreviews. We could throw in $1 or $5 or $10 or whatever else, whatever you feel like. If you want to support us and see us grow, we are getting closer and closer to our first goal of having a set streaming schedule, which would be pretty nice. But you can also get some really cool rewards at various tiers, especially some amazing art by the one and only Yorin Evers. So thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. If there are any other games or anything else that you want to see this kind of editorial style review of, or just impressions of, please never hesitate to tweet at me. I'm @GoCritical and @JimmyGood013 on Twitter. Thank you so much, and remember to adapt and overcome.